Hey there, my friend. Welcome. This is Dr. Anthony Balduzzi, founder here at the Fit Father Project and the Fit Mother Project. And I'm pumped up for today's video because we're going to be talking about 10 of the most frequently asked questions that we get about intermittent fasting. Things like, what can I eat or drink during a fast? Which food should I eat to break my fast? Can I exercise while fasted? So if you're a person out there who is either currently using an intermittent fasting style eating plan or you're interested in maybe trying it, then I think you're going to find this video incredibly valuable. We're going to cover 10 FAQs and it's going to be hard-hitting, straight questions, straight answers, and I know you're going to learn a ton. So get out your pen and paper, take some notes, and let's dive on in.
FitFatherProject.com.
All right, so to kick off this video, we're going to start with one basic question, then we're going to get into the specifics very quickly. And the first question we're going to get is, to cover the basics, what is intermittent fasting? Well, intermittent fasting is any kind of diet eating plan setup where you're intentionally restricting your eating window, the times when you're having your meals, to a smaller eating window. And there are so many different ways we can do this. So for example, a 24-hour fast where you have dinner on Saturday and you fast until dinner on Sunday would be intermittent fasting. A common setup that a lot of people have is what's considered like a 16-8 lean gains style intermittent fasting, where you're fasted 16 hours out of the day and you have 8 hours of eating. So that might look like fasting overnight, having your first meal at 11, snack at 3, dinner at 6, and then starting your fast all over again. So that's a compressed eating window. There are other types of fasting diets, like the warrior diet, where you might be eating for 4 hours per day and fasting the other 20. Point being, intermittent fasting is any kind of eating schedule where you're more or less compressing your meals into a smaller eating window and staying in a fasted state for the rest of the time. Because there are a lot of metabolic benefits to fasting. Fasting increases your growth hormone, causes your brain to actually build new neurons, helps your body break down old denatured proteins through this process called autophagy, can help your fat burning, is really easy on your schedule. So there's a ton of benefits why someone might want to intermittent fast. So now let's get into some of the specific questions on the how-to. So the second question I have on this list is, what can I eat or drink while I'm in the fasting portion of intermittent fasting? Like, what essentially breaks a fast? Great question. So the simple answer is anything that's non-caloric, for the most part, is good to go in a fast. So the main thing when we're fasting is we're essentially creating a cellular signal in our bodies where we're saying, hey body, you're not getting energy from the form of food. So we don't want calories, because the calories are largely the trigger that says that our body's gonna fasted or a non-fasted state. So if you're a person who likes coffee in the morning, can you throw a little splash of some almond milk in your coffee? We're talking like a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons. Are those 15 to 25 calories gonna break your fast? Absolutely not. You're still in a fasted state. It's not like fasting is a total on and off switch and it's like, oh God, you had a piece of gum, 5 calories, you're no longer fasting. But there is some kind of gray area where you can have too many calories. So for example, might be like a bulletproof coffee. These are coffee where you're throwing a bunch of butter and MCT oil in your coffee. That can be up to 300 calories plus from fats. That is not a fasted state. Your body is getting plenty of energy from that. So if you're throwing butter in your coffee, I would say you're breaking your fast. If you're throwing a splash of almond milk, you're probably not. So what other things can you have? Well, it's pretty much liquids, right? Because you're not eating food. So what that means is high quality water, any kind of herbal tea, and you can certainly have some black coffee if you want. But things that are sweet, this is kind of an interesting gray area I want to talk about a little bit. Because sure, maybe a stevia soda doesn't necessarily have any calories in it, and it certainly wouldn't break your fast from like an energetic calorie standpoint, but there may be some reasons to not necessarily have too many sweet things during your fast. Because a lot of people don't realize is that our bodies actually, our whole metabolism starts in our mouth. And when we taste things that are sweet, your brain gets the signal from your sweet receptors on your tongue and basically is expecting to get sweet things. Makes sense, right? In nature, for ancient ancestors, when we had sweet on the tongue, there wasn't something called non-calorie sweeteners back then. It's like sugar is coming. So your brain actually signals to your pancreas to start secreting a little bit of insulin ahead of time. But the problem is, if we're not actually getting sugar and calories in, but we've kind of tricked our whole system, we can be releasing a little insulin. And that can lower our blood sugar a little bit. So if you're a person that finds that you're feeling, a little run down while you're fasting and your blood sugar feels a little bit low, and you find that you are also doing sweet things throughout your fast, I'd probably get those out of the system. My personal preference is I believe we can all train our palates to be a little less sweet, and there are benefits to that. So water, green tea, organic green tea is my preference. And if you're a coffee person, you can do a little bit of black coffee. Research shows, in fact, with the coffee, you take that in the beginning of your fast, it actually helps increase the rate at which your body produces ketones. So question number 3 is, can I take supplements while I'm fasting? And the answer is, it depends on the supplement. So certain supplements actually do cause a lot of nausea and gastrointestinal upset if you take them on an empty stomach. Classic examples would be things like taking too much vitamin C, certain B vitamins like folate, and if you've ever tried to take green tea extract or drink a lot of green tea on an empty stomach, then you know how hardcore the nausea can be. So point being is something like a multivitamin and certainly green tea, and I would add any kind of iron supplements if you're a person taking that, are things that you definitely don't want to take on an empty stomach. They can hurt your stomach. It's best to kind of save those supplements for when you have your first meal, which is not a big deal because if you're doing daily intermittent fasting, you're probably eating at that day, but just shift your supplements back to around that first meal. But there's certain supplements that you can totally take that aren't going to break your fast. So for example, creatine monohydrate is a supplement with a lot of great benefits, does not have calories. You can take a teaspoon of creatine monohydrate. It's not going to upset your stomach. So the rule of thumb here is, if the supplement does not have calories and does not hurt your stomach when you're taking it, you can take it. So a good example is something like vitamin D3, which is typically in a little bit of a fat, it's a fat soluble vitamin, so it's often in a little gel cap with some fats. There's such a minor amount of fat in there that you can totally take it, does not have any calories, and actually is absorbed better on an empty stomach. So certain supplements you can, certain supplements could upset your stomach. My general take on this is I like to wait until my supplements are with my first meal, unless I'm specifically taking a supplement that I want to have during that fasted period. So that might be something like a proteolytic enzyme, like a systemic enzyme to reduce inflammation. You don't want that essentially while you're eating food. So that's a kind of rabbit hole, more specific supplement. So for the most case, I would say take your supplements with your first meal. And if you want to take your supplements early in the morning because that's part of your routine, just make sure they don't hurt your stomach. It's not rocket science. Next thing, what should I eat to break my fast? Amazing question, because it does matter. The best thing to eat to break your fast is, number 1, get some good fibrous green stuff in your body. A big salad, we want to get fiber, we want to get your digestive tract moving. So a big green salad, lots of plant fiber, any kind of fiber source. So some sprouted beans, some chia seeds, some hemp seeds, fiber from like an avocado. Get green stuff with some protein. That's the first thing. And now whether or not you include carbs into that meal is very dependent on your plan, and it's totally fine. But I like to really think as my number 1 priority when I'm breaking my fast is to get my digestive tract, some healthy greens, some fiber sources, and some quality protein. And then if you want to throw carbs in there as well, carbs are actually, it's the perfect time to eat carbs after your fast. Your body's very sensitive, insulin sensitive after that fast. Insulin levels are lowest, so you're going to absorb those carbs very well. So that's something you can do too. But carbs are not necessary to break your fast, but the fiber and the protein are, and get some good plant-based sources of fiber. And another thing that I think is a cool idea too is there is some research that shows that taking whey protein, even 20 grams of whey protein before your first meal, actually limits that blood sugar response. So a cool thing is you've had a salad, a scoop of a little bit of whey protein, then you have your first meal. That could be optimal, but really the whey doesn't, it's just a small added little pro tip, if you will. Is there a best time of day to fast? Because, if we're really compressing our eating window, we could do it in so many different ways, right? We could essentially have that first meal in the morning at breakfast and not eat for the rest of the day until breakfast the next day. Or we could have fast until dinner and then fast the next day. There's so many different ways we can shift it around. I do think there's an optimal answer to this. And the optimal answer is that I think it's best to have your meal a little bit later in the day as opposed to the breakfast morning setup. And the reason I'm going to argue for this is that we've done a lot of videos on the channel recently about circadian biology and the fact that our bodies are on these natural circadian rhythms, and our bodies, especially for all of human history, pretty much expected food primarily during daylight hours. That's when we were foraging, that's when we were scavenging, and our bodies process food well when we're eating. And at nighttime, the digestive tract naturally slows down. So it's a good idea, I think, to have a dinner to break your fast, sometimes around 5 and 6, and then you can shift your body into rest and digest mode. I would not eat too late, but I also don't think eating super early in the morning is necessarily a great idea either, because you're having a meal and then you're doing all this activity throughout the day, after you've had a meal. And I think it makes more sense to kind of stay in that fasted, energized state, to have that meal be like the transition point of your day where you're shifting now into rest, digest, sleep mode, and you can stay energized during the day. Because what you're also going to find that while you're fasting, your energy is going to be great. Your blood sugar will be stable. You might feel best when you're in that fasted state. So I'm like, why don't we just prolong that throughout the day, get those focus and energy benefits, and break the fast a little bit later. But here is the big message. If intermittent fasting and having breakfast is the thing that works for you in your schedule and it works best in your behaviors, then that is the setup that's going to work for you. We're kind of like pulling hairs on what is optimal. What's truly optimal is what works best for your schedule. Next question, can I exercise while fasted? Heck yes. There are a ton of benefits to fasted exercise. Totally works great, whether your goals are building muscle or losing fat. You can absolutely exercise while fasted. I would say it'd be a good idea to get a meal sometime after you've exercised. It doesn't have to be immediately. It could be several hours later, but you do want to have a meal after you exercise. So you could exercise in the morning and you could go throughout the entire day and then have a meal later at night. As long as you're getting a high quality protein source later at night, that's going to give your body the amino acids it needs to repair the musculature. But you can totally exercise while fasted, and it's not necessarily going to impact your strength gains or your muscular gains. In fact, there is some research showing that if you exercise in a fasted state, your body actually has greater increases in protein synthesis when you feed your body afterwards. So you can totally exercise while fasted. In fact, resistance training, lifting weights, is a beautiful thing to do while fasting to prevent any concerns around muscle loss, which kind of brings me directly to the next question. Is intermittent fasting only for weight loss, or does it also benefit those of us who want to build muscle? So it works great for weight loss for a couple reasons. One, your body's burning a lot of fat while you're fasting. Number two, you're naturally controlling your calories well because look, we're compressing your eating window. So let's say you're eating 2,000 calories for the day. Good luck trying to do that in 2 giant meals. I mean, that's a ton of food, right? So you naturally kind of compress your calories when you intermittent fast. So it is good for weight loss. And a lot of people who do switch to intermittent fasting do find that their bodies start to naturally lose a little bit of weight until they hit like a nice balanced set point based on how many calories you're having. But that being said, you can totally gain muscle doing intermittent fasting. And there are actually some beneficial hormonal changes that happen with intermittent fasting. Your growth hormone's super high. You can get some modest benefits to your testosterone levels. But here's the thing. If you do want to build muscle while doing IF, you need to make sure you're eating enough food. And so I would say it's probably a bad idea to compress your eating window too small, because let's say that your body does need like 2,500 to 3,000 calories to build muscle. Good luck trying to get that number of calories in 4 hours. It's not possible. You're going to be so full, you'd have to be shoving food constantly and be very uncomfortable and probably negatively impact your health from a digestive standpoint alone. So if you are looking to build muscle, I would say maybe that 16-8 setup where you're having at least 2, if not 3 meals per day, and you have at least 8 hours to spread those calories out. If you're getting enough calories, you're strength training and making progressive strength gains in the gym, you can build muscle. There are a lot of people very successfully who can bulk on an IF. It just makes it a little more challenging in terms of getting the food in. But if you can get it in, you're good to go. But you need to know your macros and your calorie targets. We're going to throw a link up below this video to our calorie calculator for muscle building. We have something you can actually put in your height, weight, and it'll give you generally your target calories. It's like a Excel, Google spreadsheet that we made for you that you can use for free. So that's something you might find valuable. Next question. Will I lose, now we covered will I lose muscle during IF, not necessarily, as long as you're strength training. So we'll kind of get into that. Some people find that I think there's some research studies that show that people lose roughly maybe around 10% of their muscle mass, but that's concurrent with dieting in general. If you're losing weight, even if you're eating, every 2 hours, as we lose weight and fat, our bodies do lose some muscle in general. And it's just a natural part of dieting. Any athletic competitor, especially if someone who's done like a bodybuilding show, knows that the process of dieting means you're not just losing fat, but you're losing muscle along the way. Strength training, getting enough sleep, and make sure you're eating enough calories are essential for preventing muscle loss while you're fasting. But if you do an IF daily, you strength train heavy, you're getting generally the right number of calories, the muscle loss won't be necessarily any more dramatic than if you were eating every few hours. It really is, it's kind of a moot point as long as you're strength training. If you're just doing IF all the time and you're not doing any resistance training, the use it or lose it kind of principle does apply to your body. If you're not giving your muscles a signal to say, hey, I lift heavy weights, this is why my body needs muscle. If you're not giving your body that kind of signal, then muscle's metabolically expensive. Your body will start to break some of that tissue down. Question number 9, what are some common side effects of intermittent fasting while I'm actually on the fasting period, and how do I combat those? I'd say the most common ones would be the first one, feeling like you're hangry, which is a combination of being a little bit tired, a little bit angry. And we've all kind of experienced this at some point, one or another. And I think this is a more common side effect when people start doing intermittent fasting, and comment below if you felt like you were a little hangry when you started, but it got better over time. And this is because our brains actually get trained to expect food based on how frequently we eat. And this this is based on the hormone signaling of something called ghrelin and how ghrelin works in your brain. Essentially, we train our brains to expect food at certain intervals. And if we're used to eating every few hours, then we go to an IF standpoint, it takes the brain a little bit to reset those ghrelin pulses so we're not hungry all the time. So that will dissipate. The hunger will get better the more you fast. And if you are feeling hungry on the fasting, start to drink more water and a little bit of black coffee or green tea. Getting a little caffeine can also help curb the appetite just a little bit. Another common side effect in fasting, especially for people who are not drinking enough water, is headaches. And largely, the number one cause of headaches is dehydration. So you gotta make sure you're staying super hydrated while you're fasting. Water and teas are your best friends. You wanna brew a big thing of tea. Actually, I'll show you. When I'm fasting, and I'm currently fasting right now, I get this 64 ounce and I fill this sucker with tea. Carry it around with me. I'm drinking this throughout the entire day. Helps with your energy and to make sure you're not getting into that headache, low energy kind of thing. And then otherwise, a side effect might be just generally feeling crappy. Intermittent fasting has a lot of benefits, but it's not for everyone. Some people try it and they do it consistently for weeks, if not months, and it just does not work with their bodies. You do not have to intermittent fast. You can get all of these benefits we talked about in this video using a plan that doesn't involve any fasting. So the point being is ultimately there are some people that intermittent fasting doesn't work just as well. For women, I'm sorry, you do not fast as well as men. And this happens to do with some fat composition things and around the hormone signaling of leptin. Some women find they have a harder time fasting for extended periods versus men. Not to say that women can't do phenomenally well doing intermittent fasting. It's one of the schedule eating setups that we recommend over at the Fit Mother Project, but some women find that they try to get to that 16-hour fast mark, but they really start feeling like crap around 12, 13 hours. Then break your fast early. Find the middle ground that works for you. Maybe you have that salad around the 12-hour and you have that big meal around 16. We can be flexible with this, but I would say this. If you're starting IF and you're feeling like crap, I would push through, give your body a little time to adjust, and if it still seems like it's not working, then it might not be the right setup for you. And this also goes that this is not medical advice. This is not based on your specific situation, because there are a lot of health conditions where someone should not do intermittent fasting. So if you're having a really hard time, your body's having a hard time controlling your blood sugars right now. Although intermittent fasting is helpful for that, it might not be right for you based on the medications you're on, especially if you're taking insulin and then you're not fasting and you're taking insulin. That can cause a lot of problems. So check with your doctor, especially if you're on meds, to make sure that fasting is right for you, because there are some conditions. If you have a history of eating disorders, it might not be a great thing. If you're pregnant, probably shouldn't fast. There are some certain medical conditions that make fasting contraindicated. Next thing, and by the way, pregnancy is not a medical condition. It's a very beautiful, amazing thing. Question 10. How does IF relate to ketogenic diets? So to wrap this up, there's a big popularity right now with ketogenic diets. I think we've done some videos covering, carnivore diets and ketogenic diets. Essentially, when you don't give your body carbohydrates, your liver starts to produce these things called ketone bodies from fats, and your brain can run on ketone bodies. It's an alternate energy source.